Good morning, Professor Tootle.
Good morning.
So I had a friend ask, a lot of people type silly little stuff in on Facebook, and she, I think, does her own kind of creative stuff. And it was yesterday, I think. She just typed something simple that got a huge response from hundreds of people. So it resonated. It was a simple question. If
hmm
you could talk about anything for 20 minutes with zero preparation, what could you speak about for 20 minutes in front of an audience with zero preparation? So that's my question to start about education. Professor, what can you speak about? And you can change your mind during the conversation today.
No, I do this all the time, so I could speak about almost anything having
Oh,
to.
but that's what some people answered. I'd like to just
Yeah.
know, just start shooting some out.
Well, I just it's literally what I do 4 days a week, five
All
days a
right.
week. So
Give some examples. What do we know? What do we need to know a U.S. history professor knows off the top of his head?
what did I lecture on yesterday? I lectured on the culture of the South with regards to slavery and plantation life, and on the totalitarian origins of World War II. And on Wednesday night, or a week ago Wednesday, um, I talked about, you know, uh, I don't know, religious stuff at church. Uh, and
What kind of religious stuff, though? Give me 20 minutes on religious stuff. What kind of stuff?
Um, the it was the teaching the I don't know, the teachings of John Calvin, you know. Um, uh,
Okay.
so that kind of stuff I can do off the top of my head pretty. Um,
Give me major segments of history that you can just, they may not be great. You'd rather prepare, but give me a couple major segments. Can you talk about Greek or Roman history, or no, you're a U.S. history professor?
well, I think for boy, I could almost fake it for 20 minutes. I did have a little bit of a background, but I'd probably want a little preparation if I was talking about anything from classical history. I taught Western Civ for probably a decade, but I haven't done it for over a decade. So anything from Western Civ and World, I'd probably want a little preparation, but anything having to do with American political history, American social, American intellectual history, probably anything modern Europe, Soviet. I, 20 minutes just flies by.
It
So
does.
I wouldn't have any problem talking about any of that stuff.
Well, so I typed in like 30 things. I just started typing, so clearly I like talking, and I said clearly I like typing. I can speak on the Constitution for 20 minutes, or I can speak on the Declaration of Independence, local government, state government, federal government, founding a city. I said I could also speak for 20 minutes about high school shenanigans.
Yeah,
There's
I
a
mean,
lot.
I work for the Urban Tree Foundation. I could talk about the tree pruning standards for container grown trees for 20 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So speaking and listening in small group dynamics has been one of the more common ways to teach throughout the history of the human race, correct? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's how you do it, right? You get somebody
Yeah.
with a little bit of knowledge and they share that knowledge. Correct? Am I missing it? Is that what Plato did, and is that what how Lincoln learned? I mean, is that what we do?
Yeah, except for it's a little more interactive than that usually, in that there's usually some sort of participation and demonstration piece along with it.
Okay.
It's not usually just the passive absorption. You usually have to demonstrate your knowledge in some way.
So that was so more similar. So most learning throughout history has been more like law school then, a Socratic dialogue back and forth between the professor and students where they are probing.
It's usually some combination of, a content expert, somebody who knows something, and then the student testing themselves for understanding and asking questions to clarify, and then some kind of demonstration where the student does the thing.
Okay. And has that changed much? I'm starting to wonder whether it's going to change because of AI and technology and online learning and stuff. Is it been the same throughout
Well,
history?
it's one of those things that people want it to change and people believe that it has changed, but it has not changed and it cannot change.
So
Uh,
even if like I'm a professor and I do AI and I go I want a new original course, so I type it into AI and AI spits out something, and you're a lazy professor, not you, but a lazy professor spits out an AI assignment, and the students type it in AI how to respond to this, and they turn in the paper, and then the AI professor does an AI grading of that AI paper. And has any learning exchanged?
it all depends. Again, usually the when the rubber meets the road is you that ultimately every human being has to demonstrate that they can do the thing without assistance. So I don't care if it's, changing changing the tire on a car, you know, putting the siding on a building, creating a legal brief, or writing a history book. At some point, the student must demonstrate that they can do this thing, whatever the thing is.
And so, in that absurd example of AI, which could happen, it still doesn't mean anything at all. Actually, no learning's probably occurred.
Yeah, because we're talking about human learning is what
Yeah,
matters, human
yeah.
experience.
So, what is the purpose? I get when we're cavemen, I guess, and sorry to be so naive on how our species has evolved, but we're sitting around a fire, and the new generation of kids need to learn how to start a fire and how to get out of the rain and how to club a carnivore. There's all sorts of things you need to learn to live. Um, at a certain point, did it change off basic life skills to needing to have specialties and expertise, and then universities? I assume there's some date that first university came around. What insights should we
Well,
have?
I
What is
mean,
the purpose?
yeah, there's some origin and in the evolutionary biology that's important to this process, and that's what I meant when I said that really learning can't change much. Even though reformers will come along and they'll say, "Oh, we've got some new exciting thing," but we're ultimately limited by I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but we are limited by human biology, and that means that human memory is only narrative stories. Uh, and so, in order to learn something, whether it's a math equation or how to, um, like I said, change a tire. Um, we can only remember something when it's been turned into a story for us. Uh, and and no matter what happens, we're always going to call learning the ability to turn this abstract story in our head into something practical in the real world. Now, beyond the human biology part of it, then you would say the next kind of jumps came with an increasing need for specialization, uh, which meant really the development of reading, because reading is you know actually kind of a miracle. There's this crazy thing that it turns out our brain can do, um, and what we call reading and writing actually links different parts of our brains. It links language together with memory and creates new neural pathways between different parts of your brain. It's actually amazing. So it turns out that this brain, although it has limitations, it also has this incredible ability to be rewired in order to be able to read and write. And that allows a giant leap in what can be done. Because if you think about what writing is, it's actually pretty amazing. Uh, Anyone in the world can benefit from the learning of anyone who has ever lived, which means that uh, if somebody has a good idea, you can build upon these things. And all of human life can become essentially an experiment on ideas that work and ideas that don't work. And then human, after human beings not changing very much for tens of thousands of years, the introduction and spread of literacy allowed for a rapid change in the human experience. And of course, the other major driver of this was religion. In particular, the universalist religions in what we might call the Mid East or the Near East, um, and then in China in a different ways. At any rate, big leaps forward in terms of the spread of civilization, and then it played an important role in American history because the types of people who founded the colonies, in particular the Puritans, happened to be the most literate people in the world outside of, that you could imagine in terms of a total society, other than maybe you'd say Jewish people. But outside of Judaism, the Puritans had universal literacy. It was required as part of the religious beliefs that every single Puritan had to be able to read the Bible in order to determine their state of election with God. So it of course really accelerated the development of political thinking in in the colonies, the universality of literacy. I mean,
Okay.
and by comparison, I just evaporated. But the number of people who could read in England, and England was the next most literate country in the world, and it was like America's literacy, or Puritan New England's literacy rate was something like 99%, right? It
Hmm.
was virtually universal except for people who were visiting there, you know. And I think England was the next most literate country on earth, and the literacy rate was like 10%. I mean, or 5%. It
Do
was
you have any memory of why England would be better than France or Germany by other examples? What?
Well, largely it's because of, I mean, it was really driven in Europe by the spread of Protestantism. Because in Catholic countries, you typically only needed to know how to read if you were engaged, if you were a priest or a lawyer. So
Yeah.
in Catholic countries, it was just priests and lawyers who knew how to read.
Interesting. Okay, so I've learned something today. I never have that resonates actually with common sense, but I never thought of that before in my entire life. So what? Why do I need to know that information as one citizen out of 350 million? What good do we do with knowledge and education? What do we do with
Well,
it?
I think one thing, the most recent thing that it would do is I'm not sure if you follow Jonathan Haidt, but
Mhm.
there has
Go
been
ahead.
massive decline in learning since the introduction of technology into classrooms. And in terms of a public policy that you should want to advocate immediately is the removal of um, um, technology, getting laptops and phones out of classrooms.
So you want to go back to white robes sitting on rocks and
No, 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 I'm not saying that,
all
but
right.
like there's a sort of myth that technology will be a force multiplier in education, when really um, there is no hack, there is no shortcut. There are certain things, like we've got your old coach here, there are certain things.
Young coach, but
Yeah,
yeah,
your
former
young
coach.
coach here. There are certain fundamentals with your brain, just like there are fundamentals with your body and steps that you just don't get to skip. You must work your way through these steps in order to get to the next step.
Well, but I'm not sure why you diminished my suggestion of Socrates and Aristotle and Plato sitting around in their robes on rocks. I mean,
Well, because here are some things that also help. Knowing that, for instance, most human beings can only pay attention to something with intensity for 35 minutes. keeping a climate controlled classroom, having comfortable chairs, the ability to have internet access with uh, multimedia presentations. That's if you keep those things short, those all work. The ability to show something on video, demonstrate it in front of them. There all are ways in which spending money or being comfortable or having some technology actually does contribute to learning better than a bunch of people gathered outside a tree with some slate. Uh,
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I guess my example was poor,
how
but
about a pen? Think about the technology
yeah.
that goes into a really nice pen and
But I
paper.
guess I didn't mean the environment. I meant the small group dynamics of a teacher, a professor, a scholar, a wise person, and a small group of 5 or 10 people sitting around talking. I don't mean that's really valuable.
Yep. It's teacher, student, paper, pen, books.
Okay, so Professor, I have an agenda here, and I'm going to try to take two disparate parts and put it together here and see where the rest of the show goes. I over 5 years of doing these conversations, about 150 shows, you have consistently expressed angst over the state of education in America and how we're failing generations of students. And you do your best. And Jake's on with us, a high school history professor, teacher, and he has angst. And so I'm wondering, do I really want to run for school board? Not really, but that could at some point in the future. But if I did, what would I do different than everybody else that's running for school board? I'm trying to figure out how. And by the way, I'm not actually interested in education as I am in citizenship, because I'm concerned, I think you are too, about we're just seem like we're doing this stuff wrong. We're arguing about the wrong things in the wrong style in the wrong way, and we're getting mad at each other, which we don't even need to be mad at each other because we may agree. It just the whole thing seems kind of crappy right now. And so I'm trying to figure out if you and I can cipher out some stuff in education that can have us be better citizens. So
Mhm.
that's my agenda. So weaving history of education into how we take knowledge. What was it? How did the founders of our country, weaving another tale in here, how did the founders of our country take all that other stuff that was going around the world and kind of create something kind of new that's lasted for 250 years? And how do we, right now in the year 2026, take all the world's knowledge and kind of do something different because it's not working currently? We need to change up some stuff. So we
Well,
just give me some reactions to all that.
well, the first thing I'd say is I wouldn't say it's not working currently. We are sitting in the most powerful country in the world that has lifted more people out of poverty than and taught the world how to lift people out of poverty. Um, Most Americans are happy and healthy and safe and have more opportunities than any people in all of human history. So you do have to stop and say to yourself, you know, if you couldn't pick, you know, your race, your class, or your gender, uh, if you couldn't pick your the state of your physical health, um, what time and place would you want to live in? And you would have to say in the United States of America in the year 2026. It's simply, and certainly you would, even if you didn't want to say the United States, you would say somewhere within a country that lives in the Western traditions, um, in the year 2026.
China as well, or use
No,
why
no, no.
just
I mean, I think about this all the time. I have the one brother-in-law who's Malaysian, and he's from a country where one person from his village of his religion was allowed to go to college, and you don't get to pick your major. So he went to college because he was very bright, and he won. But he had to learn computer engineering, and he's like, I don't even like computer engineering. But you don't pass up the chance to go to college if you're the one person who's allowed to go to college, and you're
You really mean what you say. It has to be America or Western Europe, and China
yeah,
and Russia and
yeah.
India. No, none of those are.
Yeah, it is amazing to think of someone of my background that I got to receive a world-class education and become a history professor. I just can't imagine someone with my background ever having that kind of achievement at any other time and place.
Hmm. Well, I don't have the degree that you have, but I feel the same way about myself. God, have you met me? How did I get this job, and how did I do
Yeah,
that?
I mean, my great grandma was illiterate.
Hmm.
My great grandma signed her name with an X. My grandpa's sister, in her memoir, when they were children, wrote about how she was jealous of the neighbors because they had a floor.
Hmm.
You know, like that's uh, anyway.
Let
This
me
is still
let
a
me leave one
wonderful
more.
place of
Let me
opportunity for most people, but that doesn't mean that we can't do better. We can always do better.
let me weave one more thread in this um, silly garment I'm trying to weave. Uh, Citizenship or morals or being a good person. Maybe religious elements, but maybe not. I'm not sure. In education, not as the whole human, but just in public education. Let's say you can do whatever you want in your private education, but in public education, do we need? Oh, let me say, let me weave a sub story. In Air Force ROTC, my first year as a freshman, we sat there for hours, maybe days, learning about the nuclear subs, nuclear airplanes, and then land ICBMs and how important that the three prongs were to keep the world safe of mutually assured destruction. And I was kind of confused why an 18-year-old would be sitting there learning about mutual destruction in ad nauseum detail. And the reason is because they were training us to be missile warrior. You go two lieutenants sitting in a silo ready to blow up the world. And so I guess they wanted us to get the big picture of why we would be sitting in a silo.
One would hope.
Yeah, so that was the education. Um, Now, the I just read yesterday that the academy services, no, the high end colonels and generals, the schools that they go to, Navy War College, etc. Um, Hegstedt would like to get rid of the classic portion and just all be war fighter stuff. Okay, I kind of get that. I was in basic training, and you got to learn how to fire an M16 or a Claymore, and you got to drive a tank. You get from here to there, hand and arm signals. There's all sorts of stuff to learn in the military. But also, they did teach morals and ethics in Army basic training. In Army basic training, they taught law of warfare and what to do in really untenable situations and had us think through that. So, where does this soft skill stuff, if that's soft skills,
Well,
where
let
does
me
it
use a
start?
little bit of my classical learning to inform this discussion, because the word idiot, it comes from classical languages, and it means someone who is not interested in the universal skills that one would be required to know in order to live a full life as a citizen, in order to participate in civic life.
No,
Meaning,
wait, that's the definition. Wait, just say that again.
yeah, that was what the word idiot originally meant. And it was derogatory. It meant you're someone who does not value the the broad knowledge required to live a full life of citizenship.
Interesting.
And Pete Hegseth is an idiot by the definition. He is someone who does not value, he is demonstrating. I mean, I know the word has a derogatory meaning, but it had a derogatory meaning then. It means simply someone who does not value and does not understand why anyone would need to know those things. Somebody who says, "Well, we need to be warfighters. Why do you need to learn, classical antiquity, or why do we need to learn ethics? Why do we need to learn philosophy?" And the classical thinkers would say, "Wow, well, you're an idiot. Um, you are someone who doesn't understand the value of those things." And, two of our guests teach at, or taught at those colleges. Stephen Knott taught at the Naval War College.
Mhm.
Tom Brasino teaches at the Army War College. And in the case of both of those guys, well, the fact that Tom still teaches there, he absolutely teaches war fighting, you know, uh, and his curriculum is about war fighting. But you need to understand that kinetic, simply the engineering of death and learning the engineering of destruction is not enough in order to win wars.
Yeah.
Because winning wars is also about you need to understand when will the other side give up.
Mhm.
You are studying war fighting when you're studying what Dwight Eisenhower and Ulysses S. Grant said, which is no one wants to be the last person to die in a losing war. That so much of war fighting is psychological. You know, we're learning this lesson in Iran right now. We can destroy everything, but we're also dealing with religious fanatics. And if you don't know that you're dealing with religious fanatics and what religious fanaticism is and what those beliefs are, then you aren't going to understand what's happening when they aren't surrendering. Because you'll say, "What? What's the problem? I've destroyed this thing. I've killed these people." You need to understand ideology. You need to understand philosophy. You need to understand history. You need to understand religion. That is war fighting. Those things cannot be extracted from the study of war fighting.
Yeah. One of the things I said I could speak for 20 minutes about, Professor, was the importance of sitting around the campfire, telling jokes, odd happenings, life stories. At the end of the day, you're doing
Yeah.
whatever, but I can speak for the importance of that gathering and debriefing and having some fun. Okay. I've got one more quick question. This needs to be 1 minute or less, then we're going to go to Q&A. How important is education for the individual just so they can survive, or is it for the culture or the nation state? I mean, do we care if we're competitive against other states, and do we care if we're competitive against other nations? What is the purpose of education, individual or collective?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Oh, that
both.
was
It is um, the only thing that leads to. Um, there's a great quote. I wish Jake was here because there's a great quote about Calvin Coolidge and work, where he says it is the the means. Oh no! Here you filibuster for a second. I got to find this quote. It's too good.
all
Um,
right. And then, Coach, why I'm filibustering. Coach Seal, you're going to get the first question as soon as he Googles up his question on or a quote from Coolidge. So thanks for taking yourself off mute. All right, Professor, how's your researching skills?
um, I'm sorry. Um, I'm
Not
looking
great.
for this quote to. Let's see if I can find it. They're Googling. Um, Work is not a curse. It is the prerogative of intelligence, the only means to manhood, and the measure of a civilization. Savages do not work. The
Is,
and
is that
it's
military?
so good. The growth of a sentiment that despises work is an appeal from civilization to barbarism. If it is the learning and applying that learning to your life
Okay,
is the only path for both the individual and for civilization.
I love that. Okay, great stop to go to Q&A for 20 minutes or so. Coach Seal, you're up.
Okay, there are several things from the very beginning that we could discuss relative to education. John, relating to Colton, our Stephen and my son, teaching approximately 12,000 people around the world in 25 countries about interviewing, interrogation, and gaining true knowledge and intelligence versus just aiming toward one point. Let's not jump into that. That's another subject that I would have liked to talk about if we'd stuck on it. Let's one statement is the best example of your concepts of war, which were masterful, Stephen, is Vietnam. I spent 7 years off and on teaching in Vietnam, and the fact is, you never could have defeated Vietnam because they wouldn't have minded, John, to be the last person dying because they were so sick of China ruling them, French ruling them, and U.S. coming in and trying to control them. They were so sick of this, they would have gone on forever. And that's their mentality. So you couldn't win that war by Pete's standards of just bombing them to oblivion was the term. Let's jump back into something else. John, you mentioned you're interested not just in education, but in citizenship. And why aren't we better at this? Well, there's two things. One is a disagreement with Stephen, I'll bring up, but I think there's two things. One that you've seen, John, that I posted that relates to trust of your fellow citizens. It doesn't exist in the United States compared to any other major country. It doesn't exist. Canada being 91% trusting their other citizens. We're, far less than that. We're one of the worst.
So let's pause with that for a second, Coach. Let's get a reaction from Professor Tootle.
Wait, no, we can't pause there because there's a second point that I said. There are 2 points.
Okay.
One was that one. The second one relates to, you said that we're a happy nation. Well, I don't think that that's true. I think that there are 24 other nations ahead of us just in the Western world. And then you take Asia in general, happier than the citizens of the United States. Citizens of the United States rank low in happiness compared to other countries. I think that's another part relative to citizenship participation. Those are my 2 points, John. Go ahead.
Lovely. Professor,
I don't disagree with either point. He is factually correct that the teaching and appreciation of citizenship is at an all-time low. Trust in our fellow citizenship is in an all-time low. Reading and math scores are going all in the wrong direction. And the same goes for happiness and loneliness are all, going in the wrong direction. So I make no defense of any of those things and fully concede that Coach is correct.
Okay, so Professor, that was great, Coach Seal. Thank you. So, Professor, if we take those two as granted, citizenship, trust of fellow man, and happiness, and we've identified a problem, I assume 435 Congress people are running for office to try to fix that, right? That's in their campaign plan.
Well, the hard thing is that so much of this stuff is you don't need to do things so much as you need to stop doing things. Stop doing the things that create the mistrust and stop doing the things that create unhappiness. Because these are all recent innovations in American society and culture. And step one would be stop doing it. It's like if you're a smoker and you've got emphysema, step one is stop smoking.
Okay, so let me take a practical. Let me see if I'm listening to you. I know hundreds of real life friends, me included, that type on the keyboard on Facebook and waxing poetic and arguing politics back and forth. It's kind of a hobby. Maybe it's a waste of time. I like doing it. It's interesting. And I have hundreds of friends that also like doing it. You're saying stop it if I'm not happy doing it and go out and chat with a neighbor over the back fence and walk door to door and say, hey, we feel safe in our neighborhood and how you doing? And I see your dog out once in a while. Is that what you're saying? Do something different?
No, I mean, for you, not necessarily. Like, you're not an unhappy person. You're not an unproductive person. You still exist in the real world. You've also accomplished things in the real world. So it's not so much for you, but it's Facebook is a marvelous tool for sharing and keeping and organizing family, friends, and events. So, it's wonderful for all of those things. However, it isn't a substitute for childhood. It isn't a substitute for human beings learning and doing things in the real world. You don't get to skip the steps. In other words, you're encountering all of these things as an adult. Uh, if you never do any of the things in the real world, um, you don't know how to put um, virtual tools into their proper perspective.
Fascinating. I keep going back, and it's just because my soccer coach, my competitive soccer coach for a decade, was with us today, is with us today. My God, we had to do drills over and over, the same foot thing and the same angle. I mean, like hundreds of times, year after year. Oh my God, it was obnoxious. And then I still remember this coach, he'd make me run with my finger because I was clenched. And he didn't think that was good for some reason because it leads to awkwardness when you're running. So I still think of that. The same things he taught me 45 years ago. I think of the skills that he taught me. Is that what you're talking? You got to live life. You got to do the
Yeah,
thing.
and there's no substitute for this. We're all looking for a TED Talk, a hack, a way, a shortcut. But um, I think it was who was it who said there's no royal road to learning of geometry? Was that Ptolemy?
Mm.
Like some pharaoh was asking, like, we have these royal roads that allow us to get places faster. Where's the royal road to learning geometry? And there is no royal road to learning geometry. It doesn't matter if you're a king or a pauper. There's only learning geometry. Uh, and it doesn't stop people from trying, and it doesn't stop businesses from trying to sell you products that promise to do these things for you. But some of them can speed up tasks. But as I tell my students, you don't know it unless someone hands you a pen and a piece of paper, and then you can do that. With a blank sheet of paper and a pen. That's when we will know if the words, the
Got it.
things in your own head, if you can make them come into the physical world.
Cool. Okay. Bart, Jeff, and Susan, I need you to ask some kind of question that can help us be better citizens and make our country stronger or make us happier. There's a bunch of different threads you can take. So I don't care what your question is to the professor, but keep it to how we become better citizens in a better country. So who's up? Susan, Jeff, or Bart? Oh man, they're being shy today. Maybe they're driving. Jeff, you're up. I know you're driving. I think. Oh no, you're not. Nice to
No,
see you,
no,
Jeff.
Jake was driving.
Okay.
I don't have one of those questions.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
had something I could pose, but it wasn't along those lines.
Well, ask your own question.
Yeah.
So commonly, I end up making a comment that challenges the professor on something, and I don't have that today. I don't have a way to challenge him, but I do have something that caught my attention that he said that I figured I'd bring up, and it's probably a larger conversation. But when you mentioned that the addition of technology into classrooms has resulted in poorer learning rather than better learning, I don't dispute that. I don't have any facts one way or the other. But I found myself thinking that we may be needing to change what we're teaching and what people are learning. It may be that in 100 years, the skill that people need is the ability to instruct machines on what we need done. And all of the other things that humans know how to do get done by machines. And so we have to manage machines. And I thought, well, maybe that's silly. Maybe the classical learning is still required in a classroom. So I tried to come up with an example of where that wasn't true, and I came up with farmers and hunters, right? You You can't learn farming and hunting sitting in a classroom. You had to be out there with your dad in the field, seeing how to do it and experiencing it. So it's something for us to think about. As you know, as much as I know about AI, we're in a losing battle because machines learn faster than we do, right? It takes 20 years for a brain to start being fully functional, and a machine does it in I don't know what the time now is, 6 months, maybe not even. And I'm not saying that we've reached convergence yet, but it's not far off.
I don't know if I would say we need to probably change teaching, but we also need to change teachers in some cases because, or requiring teachers to have content knowledge. So that's one response. But my other response is my best friend is absolutely one of the industry. I don't know if I'd say leaders, but he's in the main current of leaders when it comes to the application of AI in the tech industry. And he said something to me about 2 years ago that has always stuck with me. He said, "I'm not hiring any more engineers. I'm only hiring philosophy majors because only philosophy majors are trainable in using AI because they're the ones who know how to shape and directions. And they also one of the other things that happens if we become too laser focused on believing that we need to understand on the single technology is we forget that you have to know what to tell these machines to do. Creative thought comes from the combining of learning from different fields. Steve Jobs said many times over the course of his career that it was the combining of computer science with what he learned in calligraphy classes about linguistics that sort of opened his mind to thinking about how to put ideas together. So the amazing thing about the human mind is how the human mind can put things together in unexpected ways, and we should be thinking about how to apply these tools in our lives ethically and productive and in a productive way. Um, these are all things that almost require a return to I mean I honestly when people ask me what would you do in terms of educational reform, I would say I would turn back the clock to 1960 and make and go back to having almost everybody take the standard liberal arts curriculum uh, from 60 years ago. It would give most people a broader base of knowledge that would be more applicable to technological changes that have taken place over the last 70 years. And it's not just me that's saying that. It's the people in the most cutting edge industries. And as much as we praised Marco Rubio last week or 2 weeks ago, I would like to specifically condemn something Marco Rubio said when he was running for president the first time. And he said, we need fewer philosophers and we need more people studying computer science. And we thought, well, if we had listened to him, we wouldn't be able to make great strides in the fields of AI. And we wouldn't know what to ask our AI to do. I mean, that's the amazing thing about the people who I know who are at the very cutting edge of the tech industry is that they don't just know one thing. They are all people who read widely and deeply. I mean, if you want to know the people in my life who read more um, Greek philosophy, it's all these tech nerds. I mean, they're the ones who spend 2 years studying Stoic philosophy, and then the next year after that they're deep into reading Augustine. And we act like that somehow we're saving our kids from from uh, um, from this waste of time when these are the things that the people who are at the cutting edge do spend time thinking about. Because it turns out that if you were to take the best things that have been learned over the past 2,000 years, learning them is not a waste of time.
So, Professor, oh, go ahead, Jeff.
There's certainly, if that's the case, that the leaders of tech industry and AI are focused on those things, it won't be long before they start teaching LLMs to consider Greek philosophy as well.
But yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because one of my friends who constructed, gosh, it's so crazy how advanced he is, the stuff he's doing already, because he's built several, he has personal AI agents that work just on his personal life stuff on closed servers that are just in his home.
That don't feed
Yes.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's got public agents, and some of his public agents have worked together with other public agents to hire human beings to do tasks in the real world. And you think about that means that there are today human beings working for bots who work for my friend. And somehow the energy tokens that are exchanged between virtual agents are getting money to pay human beings to do things in the real world. That's already happening.
Yeah, and that surprises me. So you're teaching me more stuff. I didn't know that was going on, Professor. Jeff, other comments? So, Professor, on that, I know I don't look old. I look young and spry and vigorous. But I started elementary school in 1971, 70 or 71. So when you say go back to the 60s, my gosh, we did rote memorization and repetition of reading, writing, arithmetic. And I don't know if it was the teachers or my father that said the most important thing about school is the desire to learn or to want to learn, just a lifelong learning. That's what you need to take is just how to think and how to absorb information. And reading was important in our family. So, I mean, that wasn't alien. That's how I grew up. You're saying we need to get back to that.
Well, just not skip it. The thing is, there's this sort of hierarchy of learning with critical thinking at the very top. And, the critical thinking is the buzzword for every educational, every meeting you'll ever go to, whether it's public or private or board meeting. They all say that they want to do critical thinking. We're teaching our students critical thinking. But everyone wants to skip the stuff that's below that in the pyramid. And you can't. You have, in order to think critically, you have to know things. Things have to already be in your head before you can think critically about them. You can't just teach the skill to think critically without knowing things first. And we have for too long tried to skip the part where people learn things and put things in their own heads. Like at some point, you just have to sit at home and read a book and take notes and write papers, and then you can think critically about these ideas. It can only be done after you've learned the content.
I've got to criticize myself real quick. Jeff, no, not Jeff. Bart and Susan, are you going to ask a question? I'm going to give you You're okay?
I'm okay. I really don't have a question, but I mean, the things that were just said today, I mean, I actually went to a workshop on happiness. So think of how horrible that is that we need to be taught how to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, and that whole concept of critical thinking, I've been in the education industry at times in my life, including working for a company that did the marketing for services who wanted to get into schools and libraries and whatnot. And critical thinking was the buzzword for now. It's got to be at least 20 20 years. And I look at my grandkids and wonder who's been teaching them how to learn, because whatever is going on, it's not working. And my granddaughter was complaining that her history teacher was making them write on paper with a pen, and I was helping her with her homework, helping her kind of answer questions for herself and do some thinking. And I thought that that was great, that that was a great teacher, because now my granddaughter was actually also getting the tactile experience of writing an answer, and maybe now she'd remember. So I thought, in an age where everybody else, that's the one class where she can't just type her answers. She has to actually write them out and think about them. But that's one teacher, one class out of an entire school district. So yeah.
Appreciate your reflections, Susan. Thank you for that. We are out of time, Professor, but I want to give you the last minute to give us some random thoughts from what I wasn't able to get us to. What do you what should we all take home from this? If you're just listening, calling into this, and listen to it next week or next year, what do you want people to know about education in America?
Well, you should know that there's a lot of progress that's being made in places that are starting to apply some of these lessons. It is actually amazing there's a learning miracle taking place in places like Mississippi. And there are people who are are still interested in setting aside politics and actually um, improving the education system in America. And it's really, we would say, it's an absolute shame, and it's hurting children. That in many other parts of America, the people are so politically motivated that they're actually hurting, now generations of students, um, because they don't want the science of learning and the science of reading. They just don't want it to be true. And uh, and people who are self-interested uh, and self-motivated. I mean, I get it. It's if you want to be a reading teacher, you you don't want to teach it the boring old way. You want there to be some new, easier way of doing it that's more entertaining for you. It's appealing, the idea of like, let's set up some comfortable reading chairs, and uh, put colors on the spines of books, um, and assume that learning will take place and that kids will essentially teach themselves how to read. But it doesn't work. We're coming on almost 50 years of knowing that stuff doesn't work. And uh, it's long past time to to revisit that curriculum and go back to doing things that lead to actual learning, actual citizenship, and I would say the kind of happiness that you can have from creative work that can only be done when you know things and you know how to put ideas together.
Well, I appreciate you having a conclusion to this show, and I value your time, Professor. Thanks for carving out an hour most weeks, just to help Americans think through things. So appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you. We did have some great comments in the chat this time. So I do want to acknowledge a couple of things from the chat. Number one, there's a great Bob Newhart video. So if you just go on YouTube and write Bob Newhart and stop it,
Love that video. Great.
it's absolutely wonderful. And what we've been discussing is called Bloom's taxonomy. And, I was saying that we want to skip and get to the top of the pyramid. And so we never actually said those words, but I do want to get that in there. And I think that was it from the chat. But
Okay, good.
yeah,
Professor,
good.
we got to go. Thank you.
Yep.
Hope to see you next week.
All right, see you.
Appreciate you.